When I was a kid, my grandpa used to share slides from his climbing expeditions in the Himalayas and the Andes and places all around the world. And that really inspired me. My name is Ben Weiland. I'm a filmmaker and artist from Vista, California. I've spent the last 10 years of my life traveling to the coldest, most remote places on the planet in search of surf. When I was 24, I started a blog called Arctic Surf because I wanted to research really remote, obscure areas of the world that might hold waves that haven't really been highlighted before. And it was during that time that Chris Burkard from Surfer magazine reached out to me, and we started planning trips to some of these places. And it's really those trips and that friendship that sparked the next 10 years of my travels. Along the way, I picked up a camera, and that's what got me into filmmaking. So let's take a look at 5 of the coldest, most remote places I've ever been to document surfing.
5,
just watching the waves.
4,
The wave breaks here. Don't be there.
2, 1.
Barrel that anyone would ever dream of getting.
At number 5, Arctic Norway. This was one of the first trips I did with Surfer magazine and Chris Burkard. It was in the middle of nowhere, near the border of Russia. It's just brutal tundra and blizzard. We met up with some locals there that offered to take us on their snowmobiles and drive through the night to this remote location on the coast. And it was so cold we had to put on survival suits. When we finally got there, there was reef breaks, point breaks, and sandbars all over the place that were just perfect setups. And that was really eye-opening for me because that was the first time I realized that places like this actually get good waves. To this day, that's one of the coldest places I've ever been. All right, number 4, the Falkland Islands. The Falkland Islands are in the southern hemisphere off the tip of South America. And right across from these islands is Antarctica. This place was freezing cold, super remote. A lot of it's just boat access. Yeah, it turns out the Falkland Islands have a history of war in the 80s, and a lot of the beaches are still littered with landmines that are active. So we didn't even know if we'd be able to get into some of these surf spots. When we finally did, there's penguins all over the beach. Yeah, I was with Nate Zoller, Parker Coffin, and LJ O'Leary, and Dylan Gordon. And the 5 of us just pulled up to this little left reef break and had it all to ourselves. It was pretty magical. When you come to these places that are so remote, you never know what you're gonna find. And I'm always surprised by the moments of beauty that are in between the surfing. Number 3 on the list for me is the Great Lakes. I flew into Milwaukee with Dan Gudauskas, and the storm that was supposed to create waves on Lake Michigan actually shifted over to Lake Superior. So we drove all the way through cheese country in Wisconsin and ended up in Duluth, Minnesota. Got a few waves there, but it was actually really crowded, and the water was freezing cold. It was just pandemonium. So we decided to book it all the way across to the other side of the lake. That took us through a blizzard that lasted through the night. We got lost with no cell reception, and when we finally arrived at dawn the next morning, perfect little waves were hitting a gravel bar. I think the most memorable part of that trip was when Dane came out of the water and his whole beard was frozen over with ice. It took him like 30 minutes to melt that beard off in the car. Those images of Dane actually ended up going viral, and that's a trip I'll never forget. Just the 2 of us in the car driving for days on end trying to find waves out here was just a good time. All right, at number 2 we have the film Cradle of Storms, which I filmed in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. Chris Burkard and I had planned a trip. This island was the most remote place I'd ever been to in my life. There's no roads, and the airport's just a dirt runway. To get around, you have to ride quads to get down to the coast. The first day we got there, we immediately came across perfect waves. It was totally unexpected. I was with Pete DeVries, Alex Gray and Josh Mulcoy. We just spent that whole time scoring surf. The landscape is surreal. You have a snow-capped volcano overlooking a bay with multiple reef breaks. There's caribou on the hillsides, huge bald eagles swooping down. It just feels so raw and primal out there. The most memorable part of that trip was a slab that we scored. That was the biggest, most perfect slab I'd ever seen. Alex got more waves in that one session than I think I'd ever filmed in my whole life. He got so barreled, I couldn't believe it. And this was the first time where I realized that world-class waves actually exist in cold, remote locations like this. At number 1, we have The Search for Volcano Island. This is a film that's coming out this fall. It's about a boat expedition through the entire Aleutian island chain. It's a place that's so remote, I never actually thought I'd go here in my lifetime. These islands are incredibly elusive, mysterious, and difficult to access. There's no planes landing on these islands. It's dangerous for boats to get near them. And so when this expedition on the Milo boat popped up, I knew I had to go for it. Some of these islands have actually never been documented other than scientific research. And so looking for waves out here truly was a novel experience. We got to explore these islands in a way that nobody else ever has before. And really, we just scratched the surface. This is a film I'm really excited about. It was a ton of work, and we just finished it, and I'm excited to share it in the next few months. Even after traveling to these places for over a decade, I've barely scratched the surface, and it's knowing that there's so much more out there that keeps me searching.